Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And I am so excited to be with you once again for a brand new Video Addict new release roundup. Now, those who are familiar with this series know that I usually have a colleague, Michael Vaughn, who we go back and forth discussing the newest in home entertainment. But this week, Michael is off in the magical land of New York Comic Con, and you will be able to see some of his coverage elsewhere on this channel, but for the purposes of this video, I am on my own. So I'm going to attempt to replicate that magic we usually have with each other, just me bouncing off with you with an array of new releases that I'm very excited to show off. And just, you can see from the first title to the last, there's quite the variety this week, and I'll just jump right into it. My first release, just in time for Disney's 100th anniversary, is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on 4K Ultra HD. So this one is a big one. I recently covered the Cinderella 4K release just a few months ago, whenever that finally came to general retailers, and I was very impressed with that title. And this one is another home run. Disney's really turned it around in recent years, and there seem to be really bumping up their physical media releases and really putting a lot of care into them, and this one is quite magical. So this comes from a new 4K restoration of the original camera negative, and the results are stunning. Some of the previous releases, wasn't as bad like the old Cinderella releases, but the previous Blu-ray release of this one did scrub out some of the fine line detail in some instances, and with this new restoration, you get some of those lines restored, and this kind of looks till it restores it back to its original theatrical glory back in the 1930s, whenever this first came out and was a huge hit for Disney. And there's a lot of great natural film grain. Everything looks really great on this one. I was very happy with the colors. There's HDR10 high dynamic range for this one, and the colors really pop out, and just like all of the colors of like the costumes and just all of the different colors of like the dwarves outfits and stuff, it's really great. And audio wise, I was a little bit disappointed to see that there wasn't the original theatrical mono with this, but the DTS 5.1 track that they've included, which I think they've recycled from a previous release, is not egregious. Like, it keeps in line with the intent of the original sounds, because the back like surround tracks are not like constantly firing and being unnatural and everything. It's more so just kind of like a little bit more enveloping like score and light environmental effects, but nothing that's like too crazy and outside of the intent of the original soundscape. So it's very respectful, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think anyone who's a fan of this movie, which I'm not really getting into the plot of this because it's Snow White and I think most people know it, it's a really magical tale that's really very expeditious in its plotting. It's just kind of like, it has a really nice pace where you get a lot of information really quickly, and like it's just the classic story that you've heard of, just like wicked stepmothers and poison apples and these dwarves, and it's magical animation, really great storytelling, and it still remains one of Walt Disney's best movies. And this release, in addition to being audio-visually like almost perfect, the special features are carried over from the previous signature edition, so that's all on the Blu-ray release. That includes a commentary. There's some archival featurettes, like with talking about like it's important within the company, and different interviews with different creative figures, but like historians from like that are looking at from like a modern perspective, and those who are actually kind of worked with the original animation team. There's a good balance of like perspectives on this release. So overall, if you're a fan of this movie, I think this is a top tier release that is allowing it to look the best it ever has on home entertainment, probably maybe even best some of the original theatrical prints. And overall, if you're an animation fan, if you're a Disney fan, you need this in your collection if you're 4K capable, because it's a stunning restoration. If you find any of the comparisons online, there's some in my announcement article on GeekVibesNation.com. The upgrade is just chef's kiss. So kudos to Disney for killing it with this 4K restoration of Snow White. They handled their baby with care, so I'm very happy about that. Sticking in the land of 4K, I'm going over to Sony, which they didn't need to turn anything around because Sony is always killing it, and this is no exception. This is the 50th anniversary of The Way We Were, which I'm not, the only thing that I'd say they're not killing it with on this one is the cover art. I think it's kind of bland and not super appealing, but what matters is the content on the disc, and it is fantastic. So what I do like about this one is there's like a little, they don't usually have like little inserts like this on their titles, but I'll show that off real quick. I probably wouldn't have minded some of these images on the front instead, but it is what it is. So you get the 4K disc and the Blu-ray included. But I believe both discs house all of the special features. But first I'll kind of talk about the story because it's a little bit less well known than Snow White. But my experience with this is my first time viewing this movie. My main point of comparison for this movie was I had heard it had kind of been spoiled for me on Sex and the City when there was like referenced in like the second season finale, I believe. So I kind of knew what to expect going in, but actually finally seeing this and kind of like seeing like Barbara Streisand and Robert Redford and the direction of Sidney Pollack, just kind of all coming together. It did not it did not disappoint me. It lived up to the hype of like kind of building up at this grand romantic drama, but it's not super straightforward in like the typical romantic sense. It's a period piece about these two, like Robert Redford and Barbara Streisand. They play characters who they form a romantic relationship, but this kind of starts out in the 1930s and goes through like the 1950s. They form a relationship, but it's kind of based on a dynamic where the old saying is opposites attract, but can they last, basically? Because they're ideologically opposed. She's kind of like a socially progressive young Jewish woman, and he's like a waspy conservative, and kind of like has like ideas that moving into the Second World War, there's a lot of clashing, and as close as they can get with one another, there's always like a little bit that's keeping them at an arm's length, and that kind of like gets exacerbated with different issues. And just seeing if a relationship can withstand these kind of core tenets, not like gelling with one another, it's very fascinating. It's very definitely with this storytelling, because it's realistic. It's not kind of like, it is a Hollywood movie, but it's not told in like a super glossy way that's unbelievable. It's a heartbreaker, but it hurts really good, just like how it's kind of realized on screen and the performances, and like you appreciate going on this journey with these characters even if maybe you're not exactly satisfied in the end. It's a different kind of satisfaction of just like watching a really great movie, and a great movie deserves a great release, and this one is fantastic. This comes from a new 4K restoration of the original camera negative in Dolby Vision. So this looks really great in Dolby Vision, and this has the DTS 5.1 audio for... There's actually two cuts of the movie on there. There's the original theatrical cut and an extended cut that runs about 5 more minutes. It was supervised by Barbara Streisand since Sidney Pollack is no longer with us. She kind of gave her input, and there was 2 important scenes that were inserted into this movie. And just, like I said, I'm not super familiar with this movie, but just kind of checking out both versions, I do think this extended version does add a lot of value. And it's not just a curiosity. It does kind of bridge the storylines of the two characters a little bit more gracefully, and I think some longtime fans will be surprised by how good this works in this new updated form. Not that the original theatrical cut is bad, but I think you'll appreciate there being two cuts, both in 4K, so you can have your choice. It'd be a seamless branching, and it works very well. But with regards to the audio, both tracks get a DTS 5.1 track. The theatrical cut is the only one that gets the original mono, since the new cut is a new cut. But the original theatrical track gets the original mono track that's in DTS 2.0. No Atmos or anything, nothing like too crazy, but 2 really solid audio tracks for the theatrical version, and the 5.1 works very well for the extended cut. And the 5.1, it's formidable, it's really nice and clean, it's expansive when it needs to with like the music and some of the crowd scenes, but it's not overbearing and not disrespectful to the mono track, which does also sound very good. There is a archival director commentary track from Sidney Pollack. And then there's also an archival making of featurette, which is pretty substantial. It's about 62 minutes long. So I'm glad that that was included. There's like maybe like a theatrical trailer in addition to this. Other than that, there's no like brand new special features, but having a new cut of the film, I think, is a really good addition, and including it being a new 4K restoration. Overall, I think it's pretty much what fans would want outside of like new interviews with Streisand and Redford and everything. But they're busy. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to like invest that much time. But overall, I'm glad that this was a really solid release from Sony. They never really let me down, and I think they did fantastic job on this. So fans of The Way We Were will be super satisfied with this one, especially since the previous Blu-ray was put out by Twilight Time, and that is long out of print. So if you want to own it, this is the way to do it. And there is a Blu-ray included in here if you're not 4K capable, but you just don't want to spring for the out of print Twilight Time, you also get that. So good on Sony for getting this out to people. Once again, the land of 4K. I was super excited to check out this disc. It came out earlier this year, and I'd heard such raves about it. I had to see it for myself. This is my first one from Shout Studio / Scream Factory. This is the Shout Select line of Streets of Fire for director Walter Hill. I had picked up the Blu-ray of this a couple years ago from Walmart whenever it was on sale, and I had actually never gotten around to seeing it, and that's kind of on me. But I was glad to finally check this one out because I'd heard such great things about it. There is no double-sided cover art, for those who are wondering, and this also does not ship with a slipcover in the original pressing, so don't go trying to track down a 4K slipcover because they did not make one for this release. So this is an interesting film. It's kind of like a rock musical mixed with like an kind of like a thriller action film. It starts out with the kidnapping of a young singer played by Diane Lane, and then her ex-boyfriend he's eventually convinced, because they're kind of like on that, like they didn't leave on the best of terms, he's convinced to go save her from this villainous character played by Willem Dafoe, a very young Willem Dafoe who's like in like this tough street gear, and he has like this his menacing Willem Dafoe look and greaser hair and everything. He's great. He's one of the highlights of the movie. The ex-boyfriend who's going on this mission has like a wisecracking young woman who joins him. Rick Moranis is there as like her new boyfriend, who's kind of like her manager, but also kind of like a weakling, and their dynamic of just what this singer has ended up with. It's a very interesting journey for that. But there's a lot of great music throughout, and the soundtrack is one of like the driving forces of this movie, and it adds such personality to this one. So just seeing this adventure from like this, trying to rescue this girl, what happens once they do rescue her, which is pretty early in the movie, and then like the retaliation of this gang leader played by Willem Dafoe, how this eventually works out. It's a very thrilling movie. I think Walter Hill did a really good job of grounding like the action drama with the musical elements. It all swirls together to make like a really insane movie that I think is a real gem from this period of time, and I highly recommend it. And this 4K is another one I highly recommend, because after I watched this, I did pop in that old Blu-ray from Shout Factory that I had picked up, and the difference is immense. I would say night and day. That's a little bit drastic, but it's immense. It's quite the improvement. This is from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. It is in Dolby Vision. It includes a new Dolby Atmos soundtrack, along with the previous release DTS 4.1 and 2.0 audio tracks. And the Dolby Atmos audio track, it's incredible. It's immersive. You have the height channels kind of like filling out this space very nicely. Everything's directionally accurate, but it's very powerful. But all the original tracks are really good too. But between the virtually flawless video presentation and the great audio presentation, AV wise, there's really no room to complain. And this also goes for the special features, because there's not a ton listed, but the content of them is fantastic. You have 2 feature-length documentaries, one of which is an hour and 40-minute documentary, which was previously released on the Scream Factory Blu-ray. So those who have the previous release will have that one. But in addition to that, they have another hour and 23-minute making of documentary that was exclusive to the second site release overseas, and they ported that over as well. There's archival featurettes, there's music videos. This is a jam-packed release. So if you're a Diane Lane fan like I am, who I love her to death, I love seeing her in this one, but I would check this out if you like Rick Moranis, any of the cast members, if you like Walter Hill, or you just like weird 80s oddities. Streets of Fire, it is so much fun. And Scream Factory / Shout Factory, they've done a really nice job on this one. Going towards my first Blu-ray release, this is sticking with Scream Factory. This is another 80s oddity of My Demon Lover, which was not on my radar at all until they announced this Blu-ray. But I wish it would have been, because this is kind of like a nice little gem. It's not amazing, but it's fun, and it involves Scott Valentine as this lead character who was cursed in the past, where whenever he gets turned on, he starts like turning into a demon, which is like kind of put him in a precarious romantic corner where he can't really form a connection with anyone, and he's kind of turned to like a life of like hooliganism at the beginning. And he crosses path with this young woman here who is also she's unluckily in love, but more in a traditional manner. She just keeps like falling in love with guys who are just not good for her, and she's kind of like a sad sack. But whenever they come together, which initially I did not vibe on their relationship because he is so obnoxious and she's like so precious and I just want the best for her. But once they kind of like start like hanging out with each other more and start to know each other, and eventually dealing with this problem of him turning into a demon, and this turns into a really nice like supernatural romantic comedy. And there's like this background of like a serial killer that's on the loose, that people believe that it is our lead character, played by Scott Valentine. But you kind of like wondering who is killing all these people, trying to get to the bottom of that, trying to get to the bottom of how they can possibly shake this demon curse. All of this works together in like a really fun way. It kind of like has almost like So I Married an Axe Murderer vibes, where it's kind of silly, but it's fun and like a little dark, but it's like not too scary or anything. There's some good makeup effects, like you may have seen whenever I showed off the interior artwork, but this is a fun one. It's like an 80s oddity that is, I love these 80s oddities, that's just kind of snuck up on me and I enjoyed it. This comes from a 2K scan of the Interpositive, and it comes with a DTS 2.0 soundtrack, which sounds really nice. There's not a lot of wear and tear or anything like that. This does come with a 29-minute making of featurette, which is new, with interviews with all like the director and the cast members and stuff, which is really cool. There's another couple of interviews that's 9 and 10 minutes long with the makeup artist and the composer. So overall, pretty nice selection of special features, good video presentation. It's very, not a lot of like artifacts or like remaining nicks or scratches, everything. This has been cleaned up pretty well. So My Demon Lover is recommended if you kind of like this kind of genre and stuff. A little bit more serious, going back in the 70s a little bit. This is The Pack, also from Scream Factory. And this is like Cujo hyped up to like incredible levels, where there's a whole pack of wild killer dogs here. So this has Joe Don Baker in it. There's no reversible cover art, but it's kind of like some interesting interior artwork here. So yeah, it's a killer dog movie. It's very, it's about like a group of dogs who have been like abandoned and left to their own devices and then learned to become killer dogs. And it's very visceral and sometimes upsetting to watch. I'm really glad that there's some special features on here that talks about the dog trainers and how they like how well these dogs are taken care of. If you even if it's like a violent dog, if you're not comfortable with violence against animals, do not watch this movie because there are several dogs that get killed in the trying to like save people trying to save themselves from these dogs. But if you're okay with like fake animal violence, then this one's very visceral. It had me like sweating a little bit at some points and it's effective. So the pack. This comes from a 2K scan of the best surviving elements. It looks very nice. There are some limitations with the source, but I did not notice anything super egregious or out of place. This sounds pretty nice. There's some little like age-related warble here and there, but nothing too crazy. This does come with a new audio commentary and also a couple of interviews. One with an 8-minute interview with one of the actresses. Another actress gives an even longer 23-minute interview, and that one's especially interesting because this woman starts out by saying that she regrets making the movie and that she hates the movie, which I always love. Like a supplement that has like they're spilling the tea, they give no fucks. So that's really great. There's another couple of like audio features with like the like a first assistant director and like a production designer and stuff, but overall, a good, well-rounded package for the pack. If you like animal attack movies, this one is one of the better ones I've seen in a bit. My final one from the Shout Factory Scream Factory family it's a banger. Another 4K release of Natural Born Killers. Oliver Stone's crazy lovers on the run story that is so much more than that. It's Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis in this a very stylized movie about two kind of unstable people who have been abused in different ways who go off on a journey of violence, and it's a wild ride because Oliver Stone injects this aesthetic where there's constantly like there's like scenes taking place that look like a sitcom. There's like music videos playing in the background of their driving scenes and all kinds of hallucinogenic imagery. It's a very interesting image, which I'll kind of get into in a little bit with the video quality, but narratively it's a wild ride, and I like how this does really comment on America's obsession with violence and how it's portrayed in the media and them trying to create a legacy for themselves through like this interview like television show with Robert Downey Jr. And overall it's a very entertaining, very visceral movie, and there are actually two cuts of this movie. The director's cut, which has like all of the violence intact and everything, nothing had to be cut. That's the one in 4K. Both cuts are available on additional Blu-ray discs, so you do get the theatrical cut as well on Blu-ray discs. So you can pick your poison of which one you like. But either way, this movie's a lot of fun. Both versions of the film have the Nine Inch Nails song "Burn" reestablished into this movie, reinstated into this movie, because that one's been missing from home entertainment for quite a while. And so longtime fans of this film, they haven't seen it with that Nine Inch Nails song in a while. So I'm glad that all the rights were able to be worked out and they were able to include it in a very pivotal moment near the end of the movie. So movie, it's crazy, it's grotesque, but it's a lot of fun. And this 4K restoration, it treats it well for the first time in a long time on home entertainment. This comes from a new 4K scan of the original camera negative. This comes in Dolby Vision. This includes a DTS 5.1 and a 2.0 soundtrack. The sound is really good. The 4K restoration, it is fabulous. It is so good. The previous release had a very processed look. This is very natural, even with the different sources. Like I said, there's the opening when you're getting some of Mallory's backstory with her family and kind of being abused by her father, played by Rodney Dangerfield. It's shot in like a video source, and that is implemented well into this, even though you shouldn't expect like crisp, pristine imagery on all of this footage just because there's so many different sources. But what is there is the best version of itself, and that's pretty much all you can ask for, is like a movie to look at the best version of itself. But so yeah, you have the great video, great audio, and a really nice selection of features. You get all the archival featurettes that were on previous releases. You get a audio commentary from director Oliver Stone. You get some new interviews, like with the co-editor, the producer. So many, like, so much in the way of special features that I don't think anyone will be complaining, because I know there's a lot of fans of this movie, and rightfully so. It's wild, script from Quentin Tarantino, which I think he's kind of distanced himself because it wasn't his pure vision, but you do get that kind of like bedwork. Overall, great release, great movie, even if it can be a tough watch. And picking up on what I kind of consider almost like a spiritual sequel, but like with like through a queer lens. I'm heading into my Strand releasing Blu-ray release of the Doom Generation with Rose McGowan and James Duval and Jonathan Schick. This is from Greg Araki, he's a great indie filmmaker who's been around for quite a while, and he's like made some great bits of queer cinema. And this originally debuted at the Sundance Film Festival in the late 90s, and this is actually the first time it's been released in that form since that time. This is a new restoration, not just a new scan of what's already been put out in the past. This is an all-new kind of restoration effort by Araki to get this version looking and sounding like the version that he prefers. So previous releases had a lot of stuff cut out for like content and like different things that they didn't approve of, and this is kind of put back all in its queer glory. And I say this kind of like, there's a tongue-in-cheek bit at the beginning of this movie where they say this is a heterosexual romance, but like through Araki's lens, it is anything but. It's, once again, it starts out like a boy and girl who end up going on the run with this kind of a vagabond guy that they pick up, much to the chagrin of Rose McGowan's character. And I like how all of their names, they spell out like, or represent red, white, and blue. So it's like another commentary on America and their obsession with violence and how it's portrayed in the media. So like I said, a spiritual successor to Natural Born Killers, in my opinion. But this delves much more into the different like interworkings of like the sexual dynamics between these three characters, and how it does weave in like some instances of like queer romance and different what sexuality means to different people and all this. And this leads to down paths that are kind of hard to stomach sometimes. Like there's some sexual violence and all kinds of craziness once these people are on the run after accidentally killing a convenience store owner. And it just kind of devolves into like a crazy road trip of like depravity, sexuality, and queerness, and coming into like one's own. It's great. It's a really good movie. I do want to quickly note, this is not the original Blu-ray release or Blu-ray case it came in. My original copy was a little bit broken, so I subbed it out for another case. So it will not have kind of this kind of pattern if you get a copy. But with this restoration effort, it looks very nice on Blu-ray. I would not say that it's like pristine. There's still a little bit of like grittiness to it that you would kind of expect from like a low budget indie film from the 90s, but there's no egregious damage or anything. It looks very nice. Any small specks here and there, it doesn't really amount to much. It sounds really nice. And so overall, audiovisual wise, it really impresses. This comes with an audio commentary track with all the main people, the 3 actors and Araki. And then it also has like a couple of small things, like a visual comic book. There's like a still gallery and a trailer. Nothing, but the audio commentary and the new like uncut restoration is pretty much the selling point. So if you're a fan of this director, definitely check it out. Strain Releasing did a really nice job. I think you will be very impressed. And speaking of kind of in the queer cinema realm, this is an interesting release from Kino Lorber. This is Sex, Power, and Money films by Beth B. And mostly these are documentary shorts. They range in length. I believe there's like 13 of these that run from like it is as short as like 3 minutes to like 70 minutes, I believe. Here's a 71-minute one. And it's hard to kind of encompass what all is on these 2 discs, but basically what you'll get are shorts about sex, power, money, and how the mostly the sex and power is what I think this mostly focuses on, because several of these are very confessional in tone. Some of the most substantial pieces, one involves like several different characters or people that are either reenacting or telling their own stories of like abuse and trauma, and that's kind of very harrowing. And there's another really interesting film where there's all these people that are gathered together to enact their deepest fantasies with like a complete stranger in a room, and kind of they're filmed and see how that works out. And it can be sexual, it cannot be sexual, it can be any fantasy that they want fulfilled, basically like guilt-free. And that's kind of where that goes, is sometimes harrowing, sometimes it's like amusing, and sometimes it's very touching. And I think that short especially is kind of like the cornerstone of this set. But there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's like a music video that starts it out. There's just a lot of there's just one short where there's just people masturbating. You don't see them like doing the act, but you kind of like see their faces as they until the completion. And so this is very experimental, very aggressive, but in a way that I think is very interesting. And the sole supplemental feature on this is a new interview with Beth B. It runs about 14 minutes, where she talks about her struggles to get financing and within this space, and how that's kind of impacted her career, and how it kind of inspired her to take her career by her in her own hands and just kind of do stuff, run and gun and all this stuff. So if you're a fan of this if it sounds interesting to you, or a fan of like queer filmmaking or DIY filmmaking from indie auteurs that just really have a specific vision, definitely check this one out. It's not the most accessible, but I think it's rewarding for the right audience. Speaking of not accessible, this one, I think this could be the most controversial release that I talk about this week. But it was a mainstream movie, so we'll get into it. This is from Kino Lorber Studio Classics. This is Pretty Baby with Brooke Shields. I have to start out, I'm really glad that I watched Brooke Shields, the documentary on Brooke Shields earlier this year, which is on Hulu. It's like a 2-part documentary called Pretty Baby Brooke Shields. So it's a very important part of her career. And why this release is controversial is because she plays a 12-year-old, and she was also, I believe, around that age as well. And she gets, they show her fully naked several times throughout this movie, because this is a film dealing with prostitutes in like 1917's New Orleans. And it's like it's directed by Louis Malle, who's like a famous auteur from Europe, and he's done like a lot of films both abroad and domestically. And what this story is about a girl who thinks that she needs to grow up and be like all the women around her, that she's growing up in this brothel, and she thinks that the women are very glamorous, and she views them as family, and she wants to kind of rush her adolescence and be like get in the business herself, and she's always trying to act older than she is. And then it's what happens whenever she does get treated like an adult. Is it as glamorous as she thinks it is? How does it impact her? What is the fallout of this? And yes, this could have been told in a way where it would not require any nudity from a child. That aspect is kind of tough to watch. And I would say, yeah, it was just tough to watch at times, just because I had heard about this, but just like hearing like, okay, I didn't really expect it to like show certain things, and then just like right there on your screen, you're like, oh, okay. But outside of the controversy and outside of the more unpleasant aspects of this, I think it's a well done, interesting movie, dealing with those themes that we're talking about loss of innocence in childhood and all these aspects. It could be handled a lot more respectfully, but judging based on what Brooke has said on her documentary, and there's an interview on here, I think she does still really embrace the movie on a certain level. She's proud of the movie, even if there are issues with it. So, taking all that into account, it's not going to be for everyone. It's not going to be for a lot of people, but if you know that you're into this movie for the right reasons, I think it's an interesting movie. And this release is really good. This comes from a new 4K scan of the original 35mm camera negative by Paramount Pictures, the original distributor. And it looks very nice. It's like well-resolved film grain. Everything looks really good. I didn't see much in the way of like lingering specks or anything like that. The grain seemed to resolve well. The colors are nice. Overall, it's very good. And beyond Brooke Shields, there's a really impressive cast. There's Susan Sarandon, Keith Carradine. Both of them do very good jobs in their own way. But Brooke Shields is like the star and kind of most associated with this movie. But there is another featurette with film historian and reviewer or critic Leonard Maltin, and there's another commentary with film historian Kat Ellinger, which I'm really glad to get Kat on this one, because she's always good about putting especially female-led stories into perspective that might otherwise not be given the grace and nuance that it deserves. So just to hear her perspective on this movie is very rewarding, and I think it's a really good call to have her do this one. Other than that, not too much in the way of special features, or like one more video essay. So it gets a lot more than the average Kino Studio Classics release, but it's a pretty decent release. And so if you've been wanting to see this movie with good audiovisual and a good number of special features, you're in luck, because they've done a really nice job. Just take all those content warnings in mind before you embark on it. My next two releases I'm going to kind of cover in tandem with one another, because they're kind of all adventures from the silent era with Douglas Fairbanks. They're both Douglas Fairbanks double features. The first one is Robin Hood and the Black Pirate, and then the follow-up is The Three Musketeers and The Iron Mask. So what I can basically say about these is, just from watching these, learning a little bit of, from some of the commentary tracks, and just my own research, it seemed like Douglas Fairbanks could be best equated to like a silent era Tom Cruise, who really believed in the power of cinema and really wanted to get the most out of his work, even if it put himself in danger. And he was always kind of trying to push the art form, and I especially could see that in The Iron Mask. There's a little bit of that, but everything is a little bit dangerous, a little bit scary, which made these pretty thrilling overall. These are like swashbuckling tales from the silent era, and It does. These movies are good. I enjoy them. There are points where I did start to check out a little bit, especially the first film of each, like Three Musketeers and Robin Hood. Both run over 2 hours, and those kind of began to test my patience after a while. I did not think they really needed to be over 2 hours, but the other movies on these respective discs were a little bit more like exciting for me, but overall, all four are entertaining in their own right. They're just like them being silent films. They were exciting, but there was some like period like drama that I just wasn't super invested in. But anytime Fairbanks would really get like the action going, you could tell he really cared and he really delivered. So these from the Coen Film Collection, they deliver like the excitement that you want from a silent era film, and these are really good restorations too. So Robin Hood and the Black Pirate both come from 2K restorations. Black Pirate comes with a commentary track along with an array of outtakes, including about 18 minutes worth with additional commentary from the film historian who did the feature commentary track, and then even more outtakes. The Robin Hood doesn't really get any special features, and then neither of the Three Musketeers or Iron Mask gets any special features, but those both get 2K scans from the 4K, derived from a 4K source. And the interesting thing is, okay, so this release with Robin Hood and the Black Pirate comes with DTS 2.0 audio. This release with Three Musketeers and Iron Mask comes with 2.0 and 5.1 audio. 5.1 audio plus the Iron Mask. It was the last silent era or silent feature film that Douglas Fairbanks created, but one of the things about this particular movie is there are some very brief sequences. I think they're only between or right at the beginning of the film, like introducing the film, and right after the intermission. Fairbanks actually speaks to the audience and kind of like puts things into perspective and just kind of basically gets everyone prepared for what they're about to watch. So there is some sound in very brief portions of this. So overall, if you're a fan of Fairbanks, these are really good releases from the Coen Film Collection. If you're more of a casual fan of silent era films, maybe just check out one of them and see if they're for you. I think they're interesting, but you also might get a little bit bored. My final keynote title is one I've been excited to check out for a couple of years. I had it recorded on my TiVo, but I never got around to it. And now I finally got a nice restoration of this. This is The Best of Times with Kurt Russell and Robin Williams. And this is kind of like a silly premise, but it's like more on the heartwarming spectrum of sports movie, where Robin Williams plays a guy who, back in his teenage years, whenever he was playing football, he really fumbled an important play. He dropped a ball, and it's kind of haunted him his whole life, and it's haunted this whole small town. And Kurt Russell's character, he is also haunted in his own ways, but it's not to the degree of Robin Williams' character, who did drop the ball. But it haunts this town so much that Robin Williams' character comes up with the bright idea to replay this game and try to rectify what the trauma that this whole town has suffered in the past. And it's like I said, it's kind of a silly premise. All these kind of older like gentlemen trying to like get back into shape to play this game, and just how it kind of all works out. It's a very charming movie. What I found most interesting about this movie is like it's also a relationship drama where both of these men are kind of having a rocky relationship with their significant others for different reasons, largely stemming from the trauma from this initial game. And seeing them come to realize like what is actually important, like whether this game is important or actually trying to build a relationship with our wives that are healthy. I think that's one of the more rewarding aspects and one of the aspects I find more heartwarming. But overall, it's a really fun movie. I enjoyed it, and I think if you like sports movies and these performers, I think this will treat you well. This comes from a new 2022 HD master from Lionsgate. It's not great, but it's really good. I would say there's like a little bit of softness here and there. Still, I've not been a huge fan of all of these remasters that Lionsgate have undertaken themselves on a few of their movies, but overall, it's good. It's just not like the best. I wish it was a little bit better. This does come with an audio commentary by director Roger Spottiswoode and screenwriter Ron Shelton. Especially the insights from Ron Shelton. It's good to like learn what he took from his real life that inspired the script, and just kind of how working with Robin Williams was like a whirlwind, like just working with a cyclone. It's a really good commentary that I think is a lot of information. So, best of times, it's a good addition to your sports film output. My next title is from Film Movement Classics. It is a double feature films from Marcel Pagnol. And this is My Father's Glory and My Mother's Castle. And so this is based on the life of Marcel Pagnol. It's directed by Yves Roberts. I'm not super familiar with the filmmaker, so I'm sorry. But it is the original film, My Father's Glory, and then My Mother's Castle. They both kind of run one right after the other. It's set in France, and it's the story of this young boy who their family. His father's like a school administrator, teacher, and him and his family go off to the French countryside, and it kind of opens up a whole new world for this young boy. And he starts to learn, like, he's a very smart boy, but he starts to learn like what it is to appreciate the land and like the mountain and stuff. And he makes like a new friend, and just kind of. He just really falls in love with the area, and that's a lot of the most of the first movie. And then the second movie, My Mother's Castle, involves like him yearning to return to this space, and them eventually returning, and just like further developing their like his life in his childhood here. And he's like learns about like lost love, and how to have self-respect and all this stuff. And it's a very charming coming-of-age film. Both of these films work really well with one another, and they really give you like a really warm feeling in your heart. The ending, whenever you kind of learn, where you kind of update, like, oh, this is what happened to all these characters. It's kind of a gut punch, but overall, it's a very warm and biting movie, and it's just kind of what I was really. It's a nice palate cleanser to some of the more intense movies I've been covering. But Film Movement Classics has given these a new 4K restoration from the original elements, and so overall you get a video essay, some featurettes, and the booklet I was just showing off as well with an essay. So the 4K restorations look very nice. They're very filmic. They have not been scrubbed of its grain. Get a lot of great detail and color, especially like the foliage of the mountainside. It looks very nice. The video essays and featurettes and stuff, they're really good too. So overall, a very well-rounded package for this one. My next title is from Cult Epics, and it is the third in a trio of films that I've covered by Marlene Goris. This is The Last Island. I've previously on this channel covered A Question of Silence and The Broken Mirror, and this is her first film in the English language. And this is about it starts off, you see the wreckage of a plane crash, and it's kind of like, it's about these survivors who, they survive this plane crash, and they're trying to survive until they can get rescued, but then it goes on so long that it kind of turns into like almost like a, not completely Lord of the Flies, but in that realm of just like, you kind of see the worst in humanity when they're put into back into like this primal state. And while some people try to be respectful at first, it kind of slowly starts to devolve. And especially since it's directed by a woman, a lot of this is about how men treat women after society has broken down, and also treat other men when they're kind of viewed in like a feminine role, because there's like gay men in here who are kind of ostracized for their sexuality, and it's a very interesting social dynamic. I don't. It doesn't add. I don't think it differentiates itself enough from a lot of like island society breaking down type movies, but I think those themes that Marlene Goris is working with, and like it being from a feminist lens and how much danger women feel that they are in, it's effective. It's often unsettling. There are certain things that like the female characters are either say or asked to do that are very upsetting, but it's supposed to be upsetting, and you're supposed to get angry at the movie, and it's effective in that way. So this comes from a 2K transfer of a 35 millimeter print, and it says right out at the beginning that basically this is the best that they can possibly find. The original negative is missing, and they've done as much restoration on this as possible, but there are still some fairly rough spots throughout, and there's some nicks and scratches and density fluctuations and stuff that you might not want to see, but it's either not seeing it all or dealing with some of these like source deficiencies. So I'm glad that they did put this out. It does its job. It looks pretty nice most of the time, but there's just some source deficiencies. The soundtrack is likewise inconsistent, but overall good enough to hear, and it comes through well. This does come with a commentary track, a couple of interviews, some behind-the-scene featurettes. So overall, Cult Epics has done a nice job with this one. And if you're a fan of her other movies, well, I think they are the first two movies I had mentioned, A Question of Silence and Broken Mirror, they are better than this one. Overall, I think they're all worth watching. Going to a Showtime series that I caught up with. This is American Gigolo with Jon Bernthal. It's an 8-episode, basically reimagining / continuation of the original Paul Schrader film with Richard Gere. Jon Bernthal plays the same character who is just getting out of prison after 15 years for being wrongfully accused of a murder, and that kind of, which happened at the end of the first film. So this continuation finds the character, like I said, getting out of prison, but also a lot of this is kind of him trying to figure out who actually committed this murder that landed him in prison for 15 years, lost 15 years of his life. Him trying to reconnect with his old girlfriend, who is now like with a new man. She's remarried. There is a police officer character originally played by Hector Elizondo, who's been reimagined to be played by Rosie O'Donnell. And there's a lot of different elements within this one. It's been a while since I've seen the original movie, but I don't think this quite compares. But it's a very different thing. I think calling it American Gigolo, while for IP's sake, I think it'll get some eyeballs on it, I don't think it really works as like dealing with a lot of the themes that the original was dealing with. And it was such a period, product of its time and place that it was made in. A lot of that just doesn't work, and like how people view sex work these days. It doesn't. The series asks some interesting questions, but I just don't think it's fully equipped to really carry on the legacy of this original film. And I can't really recommend it, but there's some redeeming elements. Namely, Jon Bernthal does a really good job in this one, even if the writing kind of lets him down. I also always love seeing Gretchen Mol, and she's very good as his ex, who he's trying to reconnect with. Yeah, not my favorite watch of the week, or last couple weeks, I guess, since obviously not all of this was in the last week. But overall, if you're curious, it's not terrible, but whenever you're looking for like a continuation of that original property, it doesn't really work out. It's just a very inconsistent series. It runs 8 episodes. I'm glad it has a Blu-ray release, because last I checked, this is no longer on Showtime. I checked my Paramount Plus Showtime, did not see it come up. So I think it's one of the series that this was canceled after 1 season. So I believe Paramount Plus just probably just yanked it from its service. So it's hard to sample this anymore. So if you do want to be able to watch it, you can watch it in good quality on Blu-ray. Like I said, there's these 8 episodes, no special features, but DTS 5.1 track. Video quality is really good. So I'm glad it was released on Blu-ray, even if the series itself is a little bit inconsistent. And going to a Universal title, this is a catalog title that I wanted to check out. I was wanting to check it out during the Halloween season. Did not end up being as spooky as I wanted it to be, but it was interesting enough. This is Dragonfly with Kevin Costner, and basically there's some spooky elements. This kind of starts off, it's about a man who, at the beginning of the film, his wife supposedly dies in this this kind of mudslide accident while she's doing like some missionary work overseas. And it's the first part of this film. He's a doctor. He's kind of dealing with his trauma of losing his wife. And then he starts to have some different things, like some hallucinations / visions, and he starts seeing signs that his wife might be trying to get in contact with him. And he starts communicating with some kids and people who have had near-death experiences and that are passing along messages from his wife, theoretically. And it's about his search to what his wife's trying to tell him, whether or not she's actually speaking to him, what it all means. There's a little bit of like spookiness and supernaturalness, but overall it's more a heartfelt story at the end of the day about like grief and closure and longing for like having one more moment with that person you love. And it's kind of saccharine in a way, but I think it's done pretty well. It's earnest, and I like that sometimes. A lot of times, I'm an earnest person. But overall, it's a decent movie. It's not Costner's best, but I think it's worth a watch. And this Blu-ray comes from an older master. It could be a stronger one, but overall, it gets the job done. I wish there was a little bit more fine detail. If this was ever remastered, I would check it out. There is an audio commentary from director Tom Shadyac. There is a couple of, there's like a 12 minutes of deleted scenes, a 13-minute making of, archival featurette. So a couple of featurettes and decent audiovisual quality. So if it sounds appealing to you, I think you'll like it, but I don't think you'll love it. It does the job. My final title, which we've been on a ride, it's another TV series, another limited series I caught up with recently. This is Dr. Death with Joshua Jackson, Alec Baldwin, and Christian Slater. This is based off a podcast that was about a real-life surgeon who was performing some procedures on his patients that was very reckless and killed some people, maimed a lot more people, and kind of this is a story about how he stayed out of jail for so long, how he got kind of bounced around from hospital to hospital, and who finally put the pieces together to finally bring him down and like basically blow the whistle on this man. And so overall, this is a pretty tense and thrilling limited series. I think a lot of people might be a little bit disappointed that it doesn't delve more into the psychology of our main character, the villain of the piece, of like, why was he doing this? Because I think it's more effective in that he is a monster, and that you don't try to sympathize with him. Some people are just monsters, and you don't have to be like, this is why they did this. It's just like, no, some people just realize that they're doing something bad and they choose to do it anyway. And did it need to be 8 episodes? Probably not. Probably could have been streamlined a little bit more to a more like tense and compact telling of the story. But overall, I enjoyed all 8 episodes. I had a good time with it. I think Joshua Jackson does a really good job. There's an unfortunate fat suit near the end that kind of takes you out of some of the more dramatic moments. Both Alec Baldwin and Christian Slater have a nice dynamic with one another. It's one of the more subdued Alec Baldwin performances I've seen in a while. It's good to see him more kind of like that stoic, intimidating, dramatic mode. But overall, it's a good limited series. This is on Peacock, I believe. So if you want to sample this, I believe this is still on Peacock. But if you did want to own this, it's on Blu-ray and it looks very nice. No special features, but DTS 5.1 sound, good video quality, and 2 discs. So you can own it and not have to worry about subscribing to the streaming service. So overall, this was my immense stack that I really enjoyed sharing with you. If you've made it to the end, tip of the hat to you. I appreciate you sticking in. I had a lot of fun revealing all this to you. Next week, I will be back with my colleague Michael Vaughn, so there will be some more back and forth. But if you did enjoy this, let me know. Let me know what title I talked about you're most interested to check out. Make sure to share this with anyone that is a lover of physical media in your life who might enjoy some of these releases. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Like I said, there's more of these videos. There's some interviews from Comic-Con. There's interviews outside of Comic-Con. All kinds of exclusive content that we love sharing with you. But we appreciate you being subscribed to the Geek Vibes Nation podcasting network. I appreciate you watching this. Thanks for hanging out with me. And until next time, enjoy these movies.